Can you imagine the current Bollywood industry making a film like Veer Zara?
मेरे देश की हर माँ आप जैसी जरूर है.
No, right? I know you think I'm here to tear India apart, but let's be honest. The downgrade of Bollywood has been heartbreaking for all of us.
Tell me, when exactly you joined ISIS?
Bollywood was undeniably a huge part of many of our childhoods. But now all we ever get is propaganda. Old Bollywood movies were all of our first glimpse of India. The stars, the songs, and stories still bring back fond memories. But somewhere along the way, these memories grew bitter. Because suddenly, every other film was based solely on an anti-Pakistan agenda. Most of it was false and not even creative. All we ever saw was a bearded villain with eyes full of eyeliner coded as a Muslim terrorist from Pakistan. It wasn't subtle and it wasn't even innocent. It was pure hatred. And it's not just Bollywood. Across India's institutions, media, bureaucracy, military, even the courts, one ideology is quietly rewriting what democracy means. Political scientist Christophe Jaffrelot calls it ethnic democracy, as in a democracy where the majority's identity becomes the state's identity. And that's exactly what's happening in Modi's India. Today, we're talking about how the BJP has rewritten India's democracy. The first front is media. India once had a fiercely independent press, but now much of it is nicknamed godi media, as in Modi's lapdog media. Reporters who criticize the government lose advertising, licenses, even their jobs. And if they still don't fall in line, then Modi's billionaire allies step in and buy the media house itself. In 2021 and 2022, Reporters Without Borders ranked India among the lowest for press freedom in any major democracy. Indian media essentially has become an epitome of sensationalism.
एक बार नेवी बीच में आके कराची पोर्ट पे आग लगा दे, मजा आ जाएगा. Set fire to the Karachi port. आग लगा दो कराची में.
But censorship on TV isn't enough in a country with a billion phones. The real revolution happens on mobile screens. India has over 400 million WhatsApp users, and it's basically the national inbox. Research from the Pulitzer Center and Mozilla Foundation shows that BJP's IT cell built a countrywide network of WhatsApp groups managed by local volunteers called the Pramukhs. Each morning, they receive centralized talking points, memes, and videos to seed in their community chats. And because WhatsApp is encrypted, this propaganda happens out of sight. It's invisible to journalists and unstoppable by fact-checkers. And this isn't random chatter, it's a whole parallel news system, almost like a shadow media. And it works. Before the 2019 election, coordinated WhatsApp blasts helped drive turnout for the BJP and often linked nationalism with faith, army, and leader. Scholars like Akar Patel and Maya Tudor describe this as the cultural turn in India's democracy, where control isn't about silencing speech, but actually about flooding the zone with feelings. Chetan Bhatt calls this a modern myth, as in narratives that feel ancient but fit well within the modern algorithmic age. And then the part that hurts the most, Bollywood. For decades, Bollywood films were India's soft power, a shared emotional language across South Asia. These films weren't just entertainment, they were the best part of India. They made Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, Nepalis, Sri Lankans, even people far beyond, fall in love with the creativity that India held space for. For example, in films like Garam Hawa, a Muslim family in post-partition India wrestles with whether to leave or to stay. It was a story of genuine pain that many could relate to. And then Amar Akbar Anthony turned religious diversity into a joyous comedy. Mani Ratnam's Roja showed a Tamil woman as the bridge between peace and patriotism in Kashmir. And then Lagan became an anti-colonial parable in the form of cricket. Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs and Dalits all uniting against the British. Swades and Rang De Basanti were also amazing films that redefined patriotism as service and conscience. And Haider dared to confront the cost of violence in Kashmir and sympathized with the missing persons and half-widows. That was the Bollywood that shaped the region, and one that could make us all cry together as well. But somewhere after 2014, the story changed. According to The New Yorker, the Hindu right came for Bollywood and Bollywood complied. The transformation wasn't overnight. It began with intimidation, evolved through economics, and now thrives on self-censorship. The Atlantic traced how India's film industry, once a refuge for secular ideals, has now become a casualty of rising Hindu nationalism. After Narendra Modi's rise, tax rates, defamation suits, and troll armies created what one producer called a climate of fear. In 2020, the death of actor Sushant Singh Rajput became a political weapon. As The Atlantic reported, the tragedy was exploited by partisan media and pro-government influencers to vilify liberal actors and fracture the industry along ideological lines. Bollywood wasn't just grieving, it was being disciplined. And then in 2021 came an attack on the king of Bollywood himself. Shah Rukh Khan's son Aryan Khan was arrested in a high-profile drugs case. He was never found in possession of drugs, but the case dominated headlines for weeks. Analysts said that the motive was to tarnish Shah Rukh Khan's brand and then dismantle the other Khans by making it appear as if they have fallen from grace. At the same time, The New Yorker documented how studios began pre-screening scripts for Hindu phobia. Writers were told to avoid Muslim names for heroes. And streaming platforms like Amazon Prime faced police cases for fictional portrayals that offended nationalist sentiment. And then came the films themselves. In 2022, the Kashmir Files turned the exodus of Kashmiri Pandits into a revenge myth. Ministers promoted it, and BJP-ruled states made tickets tax-free. Police and government staff were actually granted leave to attend screenings. Historians who questioned its accuracy faced abuse and death threats. Then a year later, the Kerala story claimed that thousands of Hindu women were converted to Islam and sent to ISIS. A claim widely debunked, but repeated at BJP rallies and amplified on WhatsApp. Researchers at SOAS University of London call this trend the saffronization of Bollywood, as in the systematic alignment of cinema with the Hindu nationalist narrative. By 2024, titles like Article 370 and Operation Valentine blurred the line between propaganda and promotion. Directors told The New Yorker that no one calls to censor you, but everyone knows where the line is. That line keeps moving, and everyone in Bollywood has learned to stay behind it. And at the first sign of tension, Bollywood's so-called bridge of culture collapsed. After the 2016 Uri attacks, Indian film associates rushed to ban Pakistani artists, singers like Atif Aslam and Rahat Fateh Ali Khan, and actors like Fawad Khan. The same artists who had added a whole new layer to Bollywood. Instead of defending collaboration, Bollywood gave in to nationalism overnight. Eventually, that's a loss for the Indian public, who will not only be deprived of good music and talent, but will also fall deeper into the trap of inciting hate and violence without purpose. I think this disappointment was very aptly summed up by Hassan Rahim during the recent conflict, as he expressed shock over how Indians could celebrate the loss of innocent lives.
रात को एक बच्चा शहीद हुआ, 2 सिविलियन शहीद हुए, और मैंने अपने कमरे में बैठ के कलेक्टिवली आपकी नेशन का रिस्पॉन्स देखा है उस पे. आप लोग ये खुशी देखिए.
Meanwhile, it also seems like many Bollywood stars are now rushing to protect themselves. Because let's be real, when a group of top stars flew to Delhi to take selfies with Modi, it wasn't just PR, it was a survival strategy. As The Atlantic noted, that moment symbolized the merging of Bollywood glamour with nationalist legitimacy. Bollywood once taught us how to dream together, and now, too often, it's teaching us who to fear. Next, the bureaucracy, India's steel frame. It's one of the most extensive civil services in the world, with millions of employees who are supposed to be neutral implementers of policy and not political workers. But today, that steel frame is bending. In October 2023, the Diplomat revealed that the Modi government deputed thousands of bureaucrats as Raat Prabharis, as in traveling administrators who were sent to showcase government achievements ahead of elections. Opposition parties called it blatant misuse of the state. Former civil servants said that it distorted the neutrality of the service. Even retired IAS officers wrote open letters warning that civil servants were being converted into party campaigners. According to Indian Currents, this politicization is not accidental. It's a deliberate BJP strategy to institutionalize propaganda through administrative machinery. According to scholars, this is how the state is re-engineered to serve a single ideological community. Instead of being neutral, the bureaucracy becomes an instrument of cultural nationalism, rewarding those who echo the Hindu civilizational narrative and punishing those who question it. Once citizens start believing that government services are favors from one leader and not rights from the state, democracy turns into patronage. That's how modern autocracies are built, by converting bureaucracy into loyalty networks. And the damage goes deeper. In June 2022, India's government unveiled a bold new plan to reshape its military recruitment system. It was called the Agnipath scheme, literally the path of fire. Here's how it works. Under Agnipath, recruits between 17 and 21 serve for 4 years. After that, only about 25% are retained for long-term service, and the rest return to civilian life with a lump sum Seva Nidhi payment. That means no pension and no veterans benefits. The government framed it as modernization to reduce salary and pension costs, and a way to keep the average soldier age under 25, which would create disciplined citizens. Supporters hailed it as a revolutionary reform. But outside the rhetoric, protests erupted almost immediately. In Bihar, Haryana, and Uttar Pradesh, thousands of young aspirants, many from small towns whose dream jobs were in the armed forces, torched trains and clashed with the police. Again, Jaffrelot notes that in BJP's ethnic democracy, this line between citizen and soldier begins to blur. By turning military service into a short mass experience tied to nationalist identity, you create a generation that sees patriotism through the lens of Hindutva alone. Critics warn that rotating tens of thousands of partly trained young men through short contracts could backfire. It could produce unemployed military-trained youth steeped in aggressive nationalism but without stable livelihoods. The message isn't just serve India, it's serve Modi's India. And if the bureaucracy is the body of democracy, the judiciary is its conscience. India's courts were once celebrated as fiercely independent. But today, that independence is being chipped away. According to the Journal of Democracy and the New Yorker, Modi's government has systematically blurred the line between legal process and political purpose. The New Yorker documented how critics of Modi's government, from human rights activists to comedians, were charged under anti-terror statutes like the UAPA, often held without trial. Courts delayed hearings, citing procedural backlog. The message was clear: you're only free if you remain silent. Appointments have also become political flashpoints. Under India's collegium system, judges choose judges, but the government's delay tactics in approving names it dislikes creates quiet pressure. Several reports show that judges critical of the executive are transferred overnight to remote high courts, while loyalists are promoted rapidly. In March 2024, the BBC reported that India's top court had become hesitant to challenge executive power on core constitutional issues, from internet shutdowns in Kashmir to controversial citizenship laws. Scholars call this the judicial face of ethnic democracy, where courts preserve the appearance of legality while gradually normalizing inequality. And then there are judges who serve with their post-retirement plans in mind. Ex-Chief Justice Chandrachud, who authored the Babri Mosque verdict, is accused of the same, that is, looking for a role in government post-retirement.
Are you considering taking up a government post. Have you thought about that at all?
Now, when we talk about democracy, we usually picture elections and courts. But the real foundation of democracy isn't paperwork, it's culture. Culture is how a nation imagines itself. But in today's India, that imagination is being rewritten. The idea of Hindutva, that India is fundamentally a Hindu nation, has moved from the political fringe to the emotional center of society. You can see this shift everywhere. School books delete Mughal chapters. Cities are renamed from Allahabad to Prayagraj, Faizabad to Ayodhya. And when you rename a place, you rename a memory. And memory is power. When Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated the Ram Temple in 2024 on the site of the demolished Babri Masjid, surrounded by priests and cabinet ministers, it wasn't just a religious ceremony. It was erasure of history, community, and a cultural declaration that the state and faith are now the same story. For the BJP, Hindutva isn't a political strategy, it's emotional engineering. It links pride to belonging and belonging to loyalty. In the New India, journalist Rahul Bhatia writes that nationalism now lives in daily rituals, not in decrees. It lives in festivals, pop songs, hashtags, and the language of everyday life. He calls this nationalism as feeling. And that's what makes it so effective. And all of this isn't sudden. It began in 1923 when V.D. Savarkar first defined Hindutva as the essence of Hinduness. He imagined India as a homeland defined by blood and faith. For decades, that idea stayed marginal, but now it's policy. The Citizenship Amendment Act of 2019 made religion an official criteria for refuge, which explicitly excluded Muslims. Combine this with the National Register of Citizens, it left millions of people uncertain of their nationality. Scholar Chetan Bhatt traced this idea back 100 years. He showed that Hindutva didn't just emerge from religion, it actually borrowed from European ethnic nationalism and colonial racial theories. It's an ideology built to turn diversity into hierarchy. Now pause. Before I sound self-righteous, I have to admit that as a Pakistani, I've seen versions of this before, but from a different angle. We've lived through dictatorships that also used religion as a tool for control. Our textbooks, too, were rewritten to favor ideology over inquiry. We know how dangerous it is when faith and nationalism fuse. But here's the difference. In Pakistan, we've had to face those failures head-on, and we've called them what they were: dictatorship, censorship, indoctrination. Every few years, our crises are visible, messy, and loud. We collapse, argue, rebuild, argue again. But in India, this tragedy feels quieter. And the fact that it's happening in a country as big as India is what makes it a lot more scary. The indoctrination isn't enforced, it's celebrated. It's in the movies, the textbooks, the memes. It's a kind of a numbing of democracy, which is what makes it so hard to see and even harder to resist. As Thomas Hanson wrote years ago in The Saffron Wave, Hindu nationalism learned early on that you don't have to destroy democracy to control it. You just need to make sure it always produces the same answer. Now, when I talk about the BJP, about censorship and propaganda, and about Hindutva and control, I'm not talking about India as an enemy. I'm talking about India as a warning. In July 2023, a mural appeared inside India's new parliament building, showing an ancient map of a greater India, which stretched across Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, and even Afghanistan. Officials called it cultural symbolism, but to many of us in the region, it looked like a manifesto, a visual expression of the Akhand Bharat dream, a Hindu civilization united under one cultural and maybe political order. And that's why this story matters far beyond India's borders, because when a state starts to see itself as the center of a civilizational destiny, neighbors stop being neighbors. They become territories. They become territories of history waiting to be reclaimed. That's why this isn't just India's story alone. It's about South Asia's future, and we all should be worried.